The agenda for today is all talking about selling your properties, talking about buyers lists, talking about potentially even paid advertising, and then also, again, some more advanced strategies. Let's talk about selling. The basic principles of selling is, the first thing is, who loves sales? Who loves selling? Let's see, who loves selling? That's the difference. All right, so quite a few people here. Great. Who does not love selling? The act of selling. All right, just as many people. So it's 50-50. Right, and 50% decided not to raise their hands. All right. So what we're going to talk about is marketing more than selling. Because selling has a little bit of a kind of like touch or reputation to it. When people hear selling, they hear used car salesman, they use shoving something down somebody's throat that they actually don't want. They're hearing using psychological tricks to convince somebody. They're hearing all these kind of different things in their mind. But what we are really doing is not selling. What we're really doing is marketing great properties to people who are already looking looking for land. So in essence, marketing, my definition, there's many definitions of marketing, but our definition of marketing is that showing people who are already looking for what you have, comma, the benefits of your products, comma, I write without commas, so apparently, so that they decide to buy your product over a competitor's program, right? So that's the definition of thing, and then ignore the spelling or like the punctuation issues here. So marketing is showing people who are already looking for what you have, the benefits of your product, so that they decide to buy your product over that of your competition. That's it. So here's the question. If you want to go and buy a new refrigerator, where do you go? An appliance store, right? You go to an appliance store, whatever they're called, right? You can, so once you go into the appliance store, why you go there? Because you know they have what you're looking for. So there's not somebody in the furniture department of the store trying to sell you a refrigerator. That would not be a fit. You're looking to there in the bedding department. You're looking for a bed, and they're trying to shove a refrigerator down your throat. That's not what we want to do. We just simply want to have the best. We want to have a great refrigerator explained and showcased in a wonderful way in the refrigerator department of the appliance store. And when we do that, people are going to be like, well, that's a great refrigerator at a great price. Let me go buy it. And the exact same thing is what we do for land. So therefore, we need to do a few things. Number one, we need to be at the right place. We need to be in a location that people are already looking for land for. Well, one of the locations is a vendor outside land.com. Land.com, they mentioned they have 13 million visitors to their websites a month. So it's the 800-pound gorilla of land websites. Land.com, landwatch.com, landandfarms.com, like particularly landwatch.com. Gets millions and millions and millions of visitors, and you can put your property on landwatch.com. There's a fee for it, but you can put it up there, and then you can pay a little bit extra for certain things, like, for example, having it be on the front page for that area, for your county, on the front page for the city that it's located in. You can have it highlighted. You can also go even further with them and actually do a banner advertising on the sides, on the top. If you have a lot of land in that, you can actually start paying them for banner advertising and so on. So people click on the banners, they come over to you, and then they go to your website. So ultimately, what you want is you do want your own website, which your investment dominator has, and then you do want to have, but if you have a website, you set up a brand new website, who knows your website exists? Nobody. Nobody. Your website is like as useful as a little store in the back alley with no signs to them. Nobody will ever find it. Right? People only find your website two ways. Either by having pointers to your website or by having referrals to your website, and perhaps the third way is to really good SEO, but that takes a while. So the point is, also, so that's one thing. The second thing, and that's what we're going to cover first, is actually you need to make sure that if you're already in the right store, that your item, in this case the piece of land, actually appeals to the right kind of buyer. And for that, we need to, the best marketing appeals to the buyer is designed for a specific buyer, so you have to know your buyer. So therefore, you need to know what property appeals to exactly what kind of buyer. So Aaron focuses on RV lots. A lot. I mean, you do a whole bunch of other deals too, but RV lots is one of the things. Well, who is looking for an RV lot? Well, people who have an RV, first of all, right? Because otherwise, what is it there for? Like, people who have an RV. So, who has an RV? People who either like, you guys have an RV, I know, right? You have an RV. So, either people who are traveling a lot in the RV, or often it's outdoors loving people. So, people with the RV, my chiropractor has an RV. Like, this guy is 7 foot too tall. He doesn't fit into an airplane, so he goes in an RV, right? So they're driving with their RV all over the place and enjoying the weekends and things out there. So anyway, so that's one of the things. So if you have an RV lot, you want to create the advertising in a different way so that it speaks to that buyer. If you have 40 acres out there, somewhere 2 hours away from a big city, is a developer interested in that? Usually not. Is a retiree interested in that? If it's 2 hours away from the city in the middle of nowhere? Probably not, right? Who is it interested in it? Well, it's the same RV people, for example. It's the same people, it's the outdoors people. It's not necessarily the RV people, but it's the outdoors people, it's the dirt bikers, it's the hikers, it's the people that love to have like their own kind of mini ranch out there. If you have an infill lot, is that attractive to the RV person? No. Is that attractive to the future retiree? Well, depending on the price, but usually no. Is that attractive to a builder? Yes, right? So again, bottom line is the market is hot. People are willing to sell. Buyers are lining up to buy in droves. We have the best profits we've seen in 10 years. But here's the five buyers that we typically deal with. It's the builder. It's the investor. The investor is people that just buy for cash and then wait, and they're looking to buy in high growth areas where values are increasing rapidly. The recreational buyer, the hunter, camper, dirt biker, also RV, and the soon-to-be retiree, and then the virtual remote worker. So again, the builder is interested in what? Infill lots. The builder is also interested in perhaps those lots, those acres that are just outside, directly outside of the last development. Because essentially, that's still the city. It ends there, and you're like half a mile outside of the last development. You have a 10-acre parcel. A builder might grab that thing, develop it, and grab it and build some houses on there. The investor buyer is typically interested in lots that are in high growth area. I mentioned already in high appreciation. So the investor buyer might buy a lot in a not so good neighborhood if he thinks that the neighborhood is on its way up. So there's a neighborhood in Phoenix called Garfield District. The Garfield District is right across 7th Street, and west of 7th Street, everything is freaking booming. University is in there, student houses in there. It's downtown. It's like there's one high-rise popping up after the other. Garfield District was completely ignored for the last 30 years. That's actually where we found our first triplex that we couldn't do, because it was a ghetto area. It was just a horrible area. And it stayed a horrible area for another 20 years. But about 5-6 years ago, something clicked and it started to go like this. And prices have grown. Some of the lot prices have gone up tenfold in that market and in that sub-market. Well, this is an area where investor buyer would buy today, because there's still a lot of fishy kind of pockets in that area. It still is a little bit of a rough neighborhood, but it's gentrifying very, very quickly. And in that process, it's a great place to invest, just for buy and hold. And some people are not willing to be the pioneers in a neighborhood and be the first ones to put a nice $700,000 townhomes into the neighborhood. Some people are going to say, let me just buy the land, let everyone else do the development, And then 10 years from now, that lot that I now bought for 80K, or that I bought for 20K, is now worth 200K. And those are the financial investors. They also buy right outside of the city in the path of growth, because they're like, this is one of the best, the well-known, but yet least done and best hidden secrets. So if you think you have a little bit of a time horizon of, like, let's say 20 years, go into a super fast-growing city, like Phoenix, like Vegas, and so on, and go about 5 miles outside the last development, or 10 miles outside of the last development, and buy yourself a piece of land. Like, flip a bunch of lots there. What I showed yesterday, that map with the path of growth on the west side of White Tank Mountains, go into a place like that. Get 10 lots under contract, flip 8 of them, but keep 2. And keep them for the next 20 years. And as the city expands and builds and everything builds around it, in 20 years, if those are 20-acre lots, each of these lots are almost guaranteed to be worth $10 million each. So anyone wants to have, if you have 20 years in your horizon, and you're basically like, hey, I'll retire in 20 years from now, then use some of the money you'll make in the land business and park it into some of these high growth areas, path of growth, and just sit on them. Sit on them. Now you might say, well, Jack, now I pay a lot of property taxes. That's true. But in a lot of states, or actually in all states to my knowledge, you can actually go, particularly if it's outside of town and it's more like rural-ish land, you can find a local farmer that signs an agreement with you that you let him graze his cows on your land. Whether he does it or not, who knows? But you let him graze his cows on your land, and with that agreement you go to the city and they reclassify it for agricultural use, and your property taxes go from $3,000 a year to $20 a year. Right? We have a whole bunch of properties that we have done this with. We have in the outskirts of Phoenix. These are like 5-acre lots that we bought for an average of $3,000-$4,000, about $3,500 average. They're worth about $30,000 today. They're probably going to worth in another 10, 15 years as the city is approaching. And from one end, they're already half a mile towards that area, half a mile away from that area. So it's probably on that side going to be only like perhaps another 5 years or so before the valleys start popping. It's a pretty large area. On the south, it's probably going to take another 15 years for them to pop. But anywhere in the next 15 years, they're going to be pop, and those 5-acre properties that we paid $3,500 for, that are worth $30,000 today, should be worth $500,000 each. In the meantime, we have all signed agreements with the local farmer in the area that they're going to put their 2.5 cows on our land, right? And as a result, our property taxes went from about $500 per lot to $7.90. So now we get to hold on to them for the next 15 years with almost no cost, while the value keeps going up and up and up and up. All right, so with that said, let's continue on the buyer types here. Builder, investor, recreational buyer, soon to be retiree. Again, the recreational buyer is looking for these properties further out. Soon to be retiree is the guy that has $1,500 in Social Security and can't afford to pay $1,500 in rent. So he needs to move outside of town. He needs to move onto something cheaper. So he's going to do a lot of seller financing. He's going to pay these properties off over time, and then perhaps get a used mobile home, put it on there, and now is a dignified retirement. Right? And you guys were able to actually offer that. And then the remote worker, which really put land on fire over the last few years, because the remote worker basically says, I don't want to live in a cookie-cutter neighborhood. I want to have my own few acres. I want to be outside of town. And of course, not everyone. I don't want to be outside of town. I want to be in the city. Now, I love having an acre, but our house is on an acre, but I love also that within about a minute and a half, I'm at Walgreens, Whole Foods, and a bunch of restaurants. So I don't want to be half an hour outside of town, but many people do want that. So therefore, remember one thing, what you're really selling here is you're not selling the land. I mean, technically, of course, the transaction is for the real estate. But what we're selling in terms of like your sales pitch is you're not selling the land. You're selling the dream of a dignified retirement to the retiree. You're selling the dream of having weekend fun to the recreational buyer. You're selling the dream of having a place to get away from it all to the recreational buyer. Right? You're selling a tremendous financial deal to the financial investor buyer. When you're selling a financially profitable development opportunity to the builder. Right? That's what you're selling. Nobody cares if that piece of land has 3 trees or 17 trees on it. Nobody cares if that lot is 1.5 acres or 1.2 acres, except for the builder perhaps. They do care. But other than that, nobody cares. As long as it's big enough for them to do what they want to do, as long as it's zoned the right way that they can do what they want to do, as long as it's in the more or less right overall location, and then they will do it. So the key is, in your description, it's way more important to talk about what's around the property than what's on the property. And that's one of the biggest distinctions that house realtors don't get. Because house realtors talk about the way it was constructed, whether it has double pane or triple pane windows. And they talk about if it's a split floor plan. And they talk about whether it's what the quality of the pool. And they talk about if it's in a cul-de-sac or not. And they talk about, and then eventually they might talk about the school district and on how far grocery stores are away. But in our case, it's all about the grocery stores. It's all about where are the amenities. It's all about how far it takes to get into town if it's on the other side. And for that, what we use is we create the perfect listing using a long-known model in the internet marketing world called AIDA. And AIDA stands for, it's an acronym that stands for Attention, Interest, Desire, Action. You see it on the right side, underneath the letters. Attention, Interest, Desire, Action. That's the formula that you use to design your listings. It's a 4-step killer process. AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action. All right? So the process works such that you start your listing with a kick-ass headline, with a top headline where you basically say, hey, 5 acres, 20 minutes from town, perfect retirement spot, 40% below market. If you're a retiree, are you going to click on that? Yes? No? Anyone awake? Yes? Yes, okay. So yes, you're going to click on that because it's an absolute perfect, it calls your attention right away. So then what we do, we anchor in the price. The next thing is, that's the attention part. The very first thing is to get people's attention. We're living in a world where everyone gets bombarded with stuff, so it's important to break through the clutter. The next thing you do is now you gain their interest. And you gather interest away by now describing the property, but really less of the property, but more what's around. So if it's a property in the city, I mean, obviously that needs the least amount of things because builders know the neighborhoods, builders know the area. You say like, hey, that's a property on this street in that neighborhood. Houses go for $500,000. This lot is available for $80,000. They're like, okay, sounds interesting. Let me drive by or call you back tonight. So they drive by, call you back tonight. It's like, yes, I want the deal. Done. Outside of the builder, this is what you need to do, because if you're dealing with a property in the path of growth, outside of town, like 20, 30 miles, 50 miles outside of town, then you want the people who move there are either future retarees or the remote buyers. And the remote buyers, they want to know how long is it going to take for me to get into town? If I need to fill up gas, where is the next gas station? Where's the next grocery store? Retirees want to know where's the next again, doctor's office, where's the next church, where's the next community that I can go there, because retirees don't move out of town because they want to move out of town. They move out of town because they financially have to move out of town. So they don't want to be in the middle of nowhere. They want to be actually as close as possible to civilization. So when you do your listing, you tell them about the civilization that's around, not just list the property and tell them like this is 2.3 acres with 17 trees and a building pad and a driveway. All of that is important. Somewhere you put that in there, but they don't care that much about that. They care much more about everything else. It's like, and then what happens is after you've done that, now you actually put in the price of the property, which is if you say similar properties are selling for $80,000, and you can sell yours for $60,000, then make sure you actually show some proof of the $80,000, because anyone can claim anything. Like I can tell you, like, okay, buy this clicker for $17,000. Similar clickers cost $25,000. They're like, great. Unless I show you that similar clickers cost $25,000, this one is, you don't believe me, right? You don't believe me. But if I can show you that these clickers really cost $25,000 and you're in the clicker buying business, then this is a bargain, right? Stupid example, but you know what I'm saying, right? Makes sense. So then what happens is offer seller financing, guys, also. Offer seller financing. Don't discount the seller financing, because now you know, even if it's seller financing, even if you accept seller financing and you don't want seller financing, you can always sell the note. And if you sell the note, you get cashed out. And then drive them crazy with perhaps an additional cash offer. So if the property is worth $100,000, put it on the market for $90,000, which is already a little bit better price. Then say, hey, with $90,000, you can get it only with $20,000 down payment or $15,000 down payment, refinance the rest. And by the way, if you want to buy it cash, I can give you another 20% off. And now you get it for $72,000. Right? So now you got an irresistible offer, because those with the cash, they're going to say, like, do I pay 72 or 90? Well, let me pay 72, and they pay you off. If they can't do it, then it's like, well, I'll do 90. With self-financing, that's a fantastic offer. Right? So the key is, when you do that right, when you do that process right, the following happens. Or when you do it wrong, also the following happens. So this is Eileen Rosenheim and Jorge Mejia. They're former students of ours. They're hardworking immigrants doing mobile home deals already and enrolled in coaching, and they learned this. So they learned this, and then they went out and did it. And I can tell you how many times, and that's why it's important if you're in coaching, that you plug in with your coach when you do those listings, because you're still going to do it wrong. That's why it's important to be in coaching, right? Because you're still going to do it wrong. You're going to do it 80% right, but not 100% right. So enrolled in coaching, and then they followed these steps as best they could. And then what happens is they struggled. Well, they didn't struggle on the deal side. They got, within 6 weeks, they got 5 deals on a contract. And then they turned around to put up the listings. But after weeks of these listings on the market, nothing happened. The deals just didn't sell. And so they called in. They did a call with a coach. And they walked them through the listings. And they literally did a screen share, looked at the listings, they like, tweak this way, tweak this way, tweak this way, and then the following happened. So they went through the AIDA process with them one more time, reviewed the listings in detail, and this is what they reported afterwards. Thank you for the tips on how to better advertise our properties. We were advertising 4 properties at a time, and we were receiving some callbacks, but not many of those were good leads, nor were we receiving response rates that we were looking to get. After our call, we were able to implement the following tips, and we were successful in putting buyers under contract for all 4 properties in less than 2 weeks and closed on them in less than a month. Guys, this is the difference between having the proper guidance and not. This is the difference between knowing exactly what you do or only somewhat what you do. Right? This is the key here. So what happens in this particular case, they did like something like $25,000. So at this point, so is that a good deal? Right? Is that a good deal, guys? Yes. Right? Yes, absolutely. So basically, what is the 1, 2, 3 punch? It's a strategy to make sure that you sell every single property very, very quickly. So here's the situation. So when Michelle and I started land flipping, we had the following situation, and the situation was that we made a ton of money in year 1, just like many of you guys will make a ton of money in year 1. But there's something, so we basically did 63 deals in the year 1, and then probably 30 of them or 40 of them were cash deals, and 23 or so were seller financing deals, roughly speaking. Now, if each seller financing deal is a $20,000 seller financing deal, we basically built up $400,000 in note volume in the first year, right? Okay, all good. All good with that. Each monthly payment about $300, that's $6,000, $6,000, $7,000. That's about what we built in that first like 8 months of the year when we really put the pedal to the metal. Great. So with that said, now we went to Warren, and at the time Warren was still working for the Richat Advisor Company, and we basically said, Warren, here's what we've done, and he's like, ooh, guys, you might have a problem. And he's like, well, what's that problem? He's like, have you heard of the concept of the dealer status? Has anyone heard of the dealer status? Right? A few hands in the room. So dealer status basically is an IRS thing and the dealer status says that if you flip a lot of properties, you become declared as a dealer. Now, it's not necessarily something bad. A dealer is basically, it's not a drug dealer. It's not, it's just it's a car dealer is a dealer. Like somebody that sells a lot of houses is a dealer. And typically that's not a problem. Because if you buy a house for $400,000, fix it up and sell it for $600,000, you get cashed out, you have the money to pay the taxes. But what dealer in the IRS means, if you are a dealer, what they say that you cannot use the installment sale method. It means you can use it, but they don't recognize it. If you are a dealer, let's say the following situation. That's a fictitious situation just to explain the concept. Let's say you get a property for $1 on December 15th. And let's say you buy that property for $1. You just buy it. And let's ignore closing costs. All you have in the deal is $1. Now on December 31st, you go sell that property for $10,000. And let's say you get a $1,000 down payment. $1,000 down payment. How much money have you made? $999, somebody says. I would agree with that. Because on paper, you have made $9,999, but in reality, you only received $1,000, so your profit is only $999. So ideally, therefore, you should only pay taxes on the profit portion of the $1,000, minus your expenses and your trips to Hawaii to see the properties and things like that, right? So minus that. But what the IRS says is that if you declare the dealer, then you pay taxes on the full profit, whether or not you received the money or not. So in other words, the IRS says, you bought it for $1, you sold it for $10,000, we don't care if you got the money or not. You made $9,999 in profits. If you're in the 33% tax bracket, you owe us $3,333. That's a problem. Yeah. Now, you can perhaps pull that off on one deal, because you got $1,000 and you pay $3,300. Okay, you pull an extra $2,300 out of $2,333 out of your pocket and pay that. You can do it perhaps a second or third or fifth or 10th times, but at some point of time, if you do 20, 30 deals and you made $400,000 in note volume on paper, you owe $150,000 in taxes that you might not have. Does that make sense? Because you have not collected it yet. So, problem. So when Warren said that, we were like, holy crap, what do we do now? Because the $150,000, like we had made money, of course, on the deals, on the cash deals, but we already had reinvested it in other deals. We had paid off some student debt, or well, all our student debt. We paid off a bunch of things that we had, and we didn't have $150,000 sitting around there cash, because we had built up a bunch of debt over time and student debt and stuff like that. So we're like, but he's like, wait a second, give me a couple of days. And Warren is one of these super brilliant guys that passed all CPA exams at once with a 4.0, right? And he went into the deep dive into the tax code, and 3 days later he calls us, 3 very stressful days later, he calls us and he basically says, guys, I got some good news. There's an exemption in the tax code that basically says, and I'm going to paraphrase it in layman's terms right now, right? You need to talk to your CPA about it, or if you want to hire Warren, go hire Warren, or talk to the Premier guys too. They may or may not know about it. I don't know, but that's why I want you to write down what's on the next slide, right? And write it down, because basically the exemption is the following exemption, and the exemption is Code Section 1237A and Code Section 453L2. Right, Code Section 1237A and Code Section 453L2. In my understanding, and I'm not an attorney, not a CPA, and I did not sleep in the Holiday Inn Express last night, so I don't know. So it's in the LS, my understanding of it, the way Warren explained it to me, was that it basically says, if you buy a piece of land and you sell it without materially changing it in the middle, in the process, and you sell it with seller financing, you're exempt from the dealer status. And what that essentially means in real life is that you get the deal for $1, you sell it for $10,000, you received the $1,000 down payment, and in that year, on December 31st, in our fictitious example, in that calendar year, you basically made a $999 profit. You only pay taxes on the $999 as the money comes in. And of course, you don't pay taxes on $999 because you off that, you subtract your car expenses, you subtract your normal, ordinary, and necessary business expenses. So at the end of the day, you pay whatever, a couple dollars in taxes. So that's one of the biggest pieces of news that we gotten back then, and that's actually, and we are 100% sure that is legit, because up until a few years ago, let me see, are you Connor Drake? Can you confirm that you're Connor Drake? Yeah, you better be, because you just won the mystery box, and your buddy just opened $1,000 worth of stuff for you, and he has it sitting right there next to you, and he vouched for you, so you better give him a part of that gift, because if he hadn't vouched for you, you would have not won, we would have had to pick somebody else. So congratulations, man. All right, good. So again, back to this here. So code section 1237A and code section 453 basically says that you only pay taxes as the money comes in, and then of course you subtract your necessary expenses first. It's a big deal because, again, how do we know it's true? I'll take your question in a second, and there's another question here too. How do we know it's true? Up until a few years ago, the IRS did not allow us to file the kind of entity that we do our land business in form of an electronic file. Instead, they wanted paper files. And every single land note that you have will have in the tax return 2 pages in it. So for every single land note, there's going to be either 1 or 2 pages. Now, what if you have 500 land notes? Now you have up to 1,000 pages in addition to the regular 50, 70 pages of your tax return. So now you have basically an 1,100-page tax return that you ship to the IRS in a freaking shoebox, right? So for years and years and years, we basically signed that stack that's like this thick, and we send it to the IRS in a shoebox, and not a single time have they audited us or challenged us on that at all. And I don't know what caused, I mean, either it's so big that they say like, oh my God, I'm never going to look at it, right? Or they say like, so big, let me look at that in detail, and it's like, yeah, they're right. Like, either way, I'm betting on the latter, right? That they looked at it in detail and said, yeah, this is correct. So this is proven, this is legit, this is thing. Now, why am I mentioning this? First of all, so you know it, but secondly, if you use a CPA out there, 99.9% of all CPAs do not know this exists, because it's deeply buried in the tax code. It was actually the lobby of the builders in the 80s, when there's a lot of turmoil in real estate. Builders were stuck with a lot of land, and they basically got that in there because they didn't want to be declared as dealers, so they could get rid of their properties and actually sell them as self-financing. So somewhere in the tax code, it's exactly there, code section 1237A and code section 453L2. That's what it says in there. So this is a game changer for us. Because what it means, because this is not true for houses. If you do a bunch of self-financing with houses, you are a dealer. You fall onto this thing. You have to pay property. You buy a house for 100 grand and sell it for 200 grand with self-financing. You do that a few times and you declare dealer. You have to pay taxes on the money whether you received it or not. This does not apply for land. Right? This is cool. Now, so the second thing is really important, is that there's also no problem with the new SAFE Act or Dodd-Frank Act. And it's not new anymore. It's like 15 years old. But Dodd-Frank and SAFE Act. The Dodd-Frank Act was created after 2009, after the big meltdown, the big financial crisis. And basically, Dodd-Frank basically says, like, well, what happened in 2009 was that lots and lots of people lost their houses because they had taken on the wrong kind of loans. Again, just like in multifamily right now. They've taken on the liar loans. They've taken on the loans with like 0.9% interest for 2 years, but then all the interest was added to the back end, and then it jumped up and things. It was all a nuclear bomb that was, or like a time bomb that was about to explode. So if we take all of this together, and on the selling side, you can sell. The IRS has no problem with you, not going to penalize you with the dealer status. The Dodd-Frank Act does not apply. You can sell as many properties as you want without having to jump through these kind of hoops. So great. We're living in the wild, wild west of real estate. We're completely unregulated. We can do whatever the heck we want. So we can do this 1,000,000 times.